Hi guys, I'm Nikita, and today I'm going to talk to all of you guys about product management versus software engineering. As a computer science student, it was not too long ago that I asked myself the question of which of these two different careers did I want to go into? And it's a question that I get asked a lot by friends and family, so I'm going to be talking to all of you about this today, and hopefully it'll help you learn a little bit more about each role. So let's get started. I'm going to start out with a quick introduction about myself. So I'm Nikita Takru. So nice to meet all of you. I'm currently a senior at USC studying computer science and business administration. My involvement with Lava Lab started pretty early, actually. It started as soon as I entered college as a freshman. My second semester in spring 2018, I joined Lava Lab's cohort as a developer and had a great experience. In fact, I had such a great experience that I decided to join Lava Lab eBoard. So in fall of 2019 and spring of 2020, I was the director of sponsorship. After that, after my sophomore year of college, I interned at CloudGen, which is a startup in the Bay Area that focuses on field service and asset management, and I worked as a software intern there. After my junior year of college, I wanted to try out what the PM role was. So I joined Microsoft as a PM intern, and I also had a great experience there and will be joining full-time as part of the Azure Data Group in Microsoft after graduation. So my point of telling you all of this is that I've been a computer science student. I wanted to explore both software engineering and also the PM side. And it's something that I went through in terms of recruitment. So hopefully sharing my story with you will be helpful so that you guys can figure out what is the best route for you to take. So let's get started. A quick agenda of what we're going to go through today is first we're going to start out by talking about what is product management and what is software engineering. After that, we're going to talk about how you can decide between which of those two is right for you. And then we're going to talk about recruiting. How does it differ? What can you do to prepare yourself for PM and SWE recruiting? And then networking tips that can help you land an interview, because I know we all want to get interviews. So let's talk about it. And then finally, once you've got the interview now, how do you ace it? So these are all the things we're going to be talking about today, and let's just dive right in. So first of all, let's talk about what does it mean to be a PM, right? So on a high level, a PM is somebody who works with developers, PMs, and designers, stakeholders, customers. You're going to be working with a ton of different people as a PM, and your job is to create a vision for the feature that you're working on and also the product space. So you really get to be in charge of your specific area, which is exciting. Now, you might be wondering, how does PM in a startup versus a large company differ, right? So let's talk about a startup first. First of all, your role extends far beyond just being a PM or your title. You're going to be working on tons of different things and being involved in every aspect of what the company is doing, because that's what the startup culture is. What's really exciting about us joining a startup as a PM is that you can actually create the early stage product vision, which is really, really cool. Now, let's say you choose to join a large company as a PM. What does that mean? Well, you're going to be working with a lot of different people, which extend just beyond your team. You're going to learn from tons of different customers, and you're even going to be able to chart your vision for the features that you're working on. So this summer when I interned at Microsoft as a PM at a large company, I had the opportunity to talk to 20 different customers and learn about their journeys within Azure Data products. And that helped me create something that would be useful to give back to those people. So it helped me basically create the best feature and product vision. And that's the PM process. You're learning, you're adapting, you're creating, and you're shipping things out all the time. And it's really fun. So now that we know what being a PM is, you might be wondering, what does it mean to be a developer? So let's get started. On a high level, developers have great technical skills. They love coding, have a passion for creating new technologies, and really like the whole process of debugging, diving into the code, and knowing that the input you're putting in is creating an output that impacts thousands of people and makes their lives better. So now that we know that, how does it differ from a startup to a large company? So when you're in a startup, similar to PM, you get to wear many different hats and meet everyone and work really with every single individual on the team. And your role also extends beyond coding. So when I interned at CloudGen as a software intern, I had the opportunity to work with essentially everyone. I had a chance to work with the CTO directly on the project that I was working on because the company was so small that I was able to really create something very meaningful and impactful for the work that I was doing. Now, in a large company, if you're a developer, on the other hand, you have a really, really well-defined project scope. You're still going to work with your team and everyone, but you might not be able to work with everyone at that company, right? Which is understandable since it's so large. But overall, you're still going to get to code, push changes, and really create something that you can be proud of. So now that we know that, let's talk about how do you decide between being a PM and being a software engineer. So these are some tips and tricks, things to think about. So first of all, if you want to be a PM, you have to enjoy collaboration. And why do you have to enjoy collaboration? Well, you're going to be collaborating with a lot of people, customers, stakeholders, other PMs, designers, developers, and the list goes on. So overall, you're going to be working with a ton of people, and you as a PM want to be able to create the vision and feature for your product. So if that's something that's important to you, I know it was important to me, that you can chart that vision, then perhaps you want to go the PM route. Now, on the other hand, if you want to be a software engineer, right, that means you thrive off of technical details. You have a passion and truly love coding, and you want to create something, like create software that impacts different individuals all over the world. So those are some things to think of when you're deciding between the two roles. So now that we know that, you might be having a better idea as to which of those two roles you have a passion for. So how do you prepare for recruiting? It differs, right? PM recruiting, SWE recruiting, what is that difference? Let's talk about it. So let's say you're going the PM route, okay? You need to know right off the bat that there are fewer internship and full-time new grad opportunities compared to software engineering. And the reason you need to know that is so that when you go into it, like when I went into it, I said, I'm recruiting for software and also for product because I know that there are not that many product opportunities out there. So my junior year, I was also recruiting for software engineering to increase my odds, right, of getting an internship. And that's something you should think about. In terms of preparation, what should you do? Cracking the PM interview. Of course, there's a book, right? There's a book, so you should read it. It's really useful. Tons of my friends who are doing PM recruiting have read that book and they benefited from it. I personally didn't read that book, and the reason why is because as a computer science and business major, I felt that my major classes that I had taken had prepared me for that interview. So I didn't read it, but it never hurts to gain extra knowledge. So don't do what I did, read the book. I think it's very useful. Besides that, it's really important to stay up to date with LeetCode. And I'm gonna say this, and I'll tell you why. A lot of people, they think, maybe I'm not gonna get a technical coding question. Well, let me tell you something. You're gonna get technical coding questions, and maybe you won't, but you need to be prepared, right? You don't go into a tennis match without having practice. Like, that's not how it works. You need to be prepared so you know what to expect during the match, right? So during your interview, in case you get anything like that, have it ready in your back pocket. Now let's talk about software engineering, how to prepare for recruiting for that. So first of all, there are tons of new grad openings, there are lots of internship opportunities, so you know that there are a lot of different roles you can apply to, and that's something good to know in the back of your mind. Now, besides that, there's also a book called Cracking the Coding Interview. I have this book, I read it, it's really, really useful, and I would recommend checking it out and learning from it. It's a really good resource that's out there, so why not use it? And then finally, your new favorite website is going to be LeetCode. I mean, this was bookmarked on my laptop, and I was doing LeetCode problems all the time because you are going to be asked technical questions in your software interview, and you need to be ready for them. And LeetCode definitely helps you prepare. A really digestible way to handle LeetCode, because I know it's so overwhelming with thousands of problems, is do 2 a day throughout your entire summer before you're recruiting. That's what I did. And those numbers, like 2 times, like however many days they're in summer, it starts adding up and you really get a lot of problem practice, which is useful. Okay, so now let's talk about how to land an interview. I'm not gonna tell you that it's an easy process interviewing, but what I am here to tell you is that there are certain things that you can do which will increase your chances to get an interview. call it Nikita's bag of tricks. Like, what can you do to help you when you're recruiting? So the first thing that I'm going to start off by saying is everyone will tell you there's always the career fair. And you know, it's true. Your college probably has a career fair. But what I'm going to tell you is there's a better way to get an interview than to go to the career fair. And what does that mean? Well, it means that there's a back door that you need to find. You need to open it up. And it doesn't have to be the career fair. And the reason why I say this is because in the career fair, everyone looks exactly the same. And the way you get an interview is when you stand out. And it's really hard to stand out in the career fair when everyone looks just like you. Your goal is to be memorable. So find another way to be memorable for the recruiter to get an interview. Now you might be saying, what are some ways I can do that? Where's this back door, right? So one of the things you can do, which brings me to my second point, is ask your friends for referrals. If you have a friend who's working at, let's say, Facebook, right, and you really, really want to get an interview there, then just say, hey, like I noticed you work at Facebook. I really want to get an interview. Could you refer me? This is a way that you can actually have your application be looked at by a recruiter, and it increases your odds. Getting an interview is all about increasing your odds, so it never hurts to ask your friend for some help. I have had friends ask me, can you tell me about this company, to can you refer me, all the way to can you send the recruiter a note and introduce me? And I've done all of those things for my friends. And most likely your friends are just like me. We want to help you and see you succeed. So don't be afraid to ask. That's where this is going. Ask them for referrals. The third thing we're going to talk about is attend small scale events that the company you're interested in is throwing at your college. This is a really great way, which isn't the career fair, as to how you can get noticed to get an interview. But let me not just tell you that, let me explain from my own personal experience. When I was recruiting, right, at the end of my sophomore year, that semester, I was like, okay, I've heard about Microsoft. I'm potentially interested in recruiting with them next semester. Let me go to one of their events in the spring just to learn about the company. And there I had a chance to talk to current interns, talk to employees who work there, as well as have a chance to get to know the an And it was during that club event with the Association of Computer Machinery that was partnering with Microsoft that I actually also got a interview, my first round interview, during a semester before I was recruiting. And that helped fast track me for the next semester, and I went directly to final round. So the point of me telling you this is, look for those hidden opportunities, and don't be afraid to attend company events that you're interested in, no matter what the time of the year is, because you never know where it might land you, right? So if you see something like Society of Women Engineers is throwing this event, sign up for the newsletter. Start going to those company talks. It doesn't always have to be through the career fair. And then the final thing I'm going to say in how to land an interview is it's really important to make your resume stand out. Now you might be wondering, what does that mean? Everyone tells me make it stand out. Well, chances are you're probably interviewing for a role like software engineering, where everyone's a CS major, everyone has a similar GPA, so what makes you different? I like to say one thing. There's one thing that you have which differentiates you. You know what it is. I don't know what it is, but you know what it is. It could be a project. It could be a class, just one thing you did, and you need to use that as your thread as you go and you talk to these companies so that they remember you. And that's one way to stand out. Okay, now let's talk about some interviewing tips. So if you're doing PM recruiting, be prepared for technical, product, and behavioral questions. I was asked all three in my interview, and chances are you're probably going to get all three different types of questions as well. So just know that it's coming your way. Also, your approach is what is going to help you stand out in terms of how you tackle a problem. So just think through what your approach is and have that in mind going into the interviewer. It'll really help. Finally, when you're doing SWE recruiting, you're primarily going to be getting technical coding questions. So just be ready for that and have leak code practiced before you go in. A way to think about coding questions that you get in your interview is think through the question, explain your algorithm ideas, think of optimizations after you've solved the problem, ask like how can you make the runtime better, and don't be afraid to ask for clarifying questions if you have a doubt, because the interviewer truly wants to see you succeed. So tell them if you have a question. And then finally, for both PM and SWE recruiting, be prepared. So this means talking to current employees, practicing with friends, and reviewing leak code and problems before you go in. And then finally, communication is really important. So explain your train of thought as you go through a question. And the last thing is, after the interview, make sure you ask questions, show your interest. One thing I always like to ask my interviewers, can you tell me about your journey? Because not everyone reaches a company through the conventional route, and it's really interesting to learn somebody's story. Okay, I'm gonna leave you guys off with this. This is one of my favorite quotes by Walt Disney. If you can dream it, you can do it. You guys are going through recruiting. I know it's not an easy process, but if you can see yourself at that end destination, you will absolutely get there. So believe in yourself and fight on.